all these, developers will come over to Pulsechain. That's what I'm hoping to see. So I'm actually hoping for more competition for us in a way, because in a way that means we've kind of made it. So yeah, I thought I'd just kind of point those two things out.
One of the things that Richard mentioned, I know in a few different streams, is there's some projects that are now dead projects on Ethereum. And then I know there was some people talking about, reaching out to those communities and seeing if they could pick things up on the Pulse chain side. But I totally hear you on that with the efficiency, the speed, the cost, all those things make it much more, it makes it a much better platform for people who want to be on EVM.
Something I think about often with the group of people we have accumulated in this community is, you give me an option to pick 10 of our brightest minds in this community, I would put our community up against anyone else. And not that we want to destroy any community. I say that as a metric to say that this community is riddled with talent, creativity, and innovation.
Yeah, I think the more unique things we can bring to the table, right? Whether it's yield or new features, new functionalities, new ideas, new takes on things, it'll help Pulse Chain stand out, right? And for those projects that are being just strangled to death by Ethereum fees, it's not so bad now, but obviously a year ago it was impossible. We're going to see some of those projects, if they wanted to be able to take their forked copy and do something with it. It's like getting an automatic and free migration onto an L2. They can take advantage of that if they wanted to, and kill the version on Ethereum and keep the version on Pulse Chain. And hey, they didn't have to do any work to get there, in a sense, or minimal work to get there, depending on how their project is structured. There's opportunities for those who want to take it, who want to get in front of it. The question is, how many of those developers are even aware of the opportunity? The royal we, this is the whole community, get out there and talk to the people who run the projects that you know and love on other chains, and tell them, on Ethereum, hey, this is coming. You have this opportunity. Take a look, right? Some will laugh and not care, and some might actually raise an eyebrow and say, hey, let's look into this and see what it's all about.
Yeah, well, once they see enough money being made, I think they'll take it seriously. But until then, they're probably going to laugh at us. And this delay, I think, may actually be a really good thing in a sense, because it's going to allow us all ample time to kind of bring some pretty mature stuff to the chain relatively quickly when Pulse Chain does launch, and it'll give Pulse Chain kind of a fresh slate as well, because I think we'll probably be in a recession and we'll be starting off at a pretty low base that potentially we can rise quite a bit from as well. So I don't know. I feel like we've got a really good opportunity to make this thing happen next year. I would love Richard to kind of come interact with us some more, especially the people building. If you're listening, Richard, it would be really good if you came and talk to even our private chat. I think there's a lot of coordination that we can all do to try to make Pulse Chain better. So I think these things are an important part of that step.
Mature products at the bottom of the market, so we can position ourselves for the slingshot in the bull. We're all here. We're all waiting. It's like, if anybody has seen Wayne's World, if you build it, they will come.
But look, hexagons, they have hex on ETH, on Ethereum, and they have hex on Pulse Chain if it's launched live. So we actually have a backup of our own crypto. That not one crypto I know has it.
Yep. And because of what Ethereum has done recently, I am so bullish on Pulse Chain that I will suck your dick for Pulse Chain coins, just so you know the offer's out there.
And so, like, you got to remember the Pulse Chain sacrifice. Like, there's a lot of L1 projects out there, but the Pulse Chain sacrifice, that was done at the top of the market, pretty much at the top of the market within like a couple of weeks, I believe, maybe a little bit more, but not even a month. And so the amount of money that was able to be allocated towards capital injection for when Pulse Chain launches is just so far superior to any other project that could possibly exist. The way it works on other tokens is typically through venture capital. And when you have venture capitalists coming in, they want something. So you have stakeholders. When you do it through a sacrifice, it's decentralized. So you don't have a centralized party with a particular interest for the project. It's just sort of, it's more decentralized in that regard. So you have a more sort of like fair you have a more fair liquidity allocation for the project. You know, when you're not dependent on some company and what they think and all this other shit. So yeah,
So
it's
two
honestly,
examples of that
yeah,
would be like SBF just raped people when he provided liquidity for him. I heard some horror stories recently, and then they've been incredibly unfair to Richard as far as coin market cap and stuff too, right? As far as listing, you know, the real value of Hex and the real market cap and all that stuff, right?
So the one thing everybody fucks up is this thing around the OA. So when you deploy contracts, and this is like anybody who's actually deployed smart contracts or ERC-20s, like they understand that you have to have some mechanism for providing the orderly function of the market. So the market maker essentially. In Hex, that's called the OA, and the OA holds a large percentage of the supply. Those are not actually tokens that belong to anybody. That's something that's part of the initiation for the market, for the market of Hex, right? It facilitates the orderly flow of market making, and yeah, so that's basically what it is. However, those tokens, that supply is pretty large, and so what these coin market, they can set whatever standards they want for evaluating market cap. And so because the OA exists, they try to kind of downplay how much actual activity is on the chain. And essentially the OA has never sold any Hex at all, right? That's because it's not like a physical person who's trying to make profit, right? It's just a pool that's used for market making, like because it launched on Uniswap, right? A decentralized exchange. So essentially, yeah, that's like what Sam did is he did the exact same thing, except for with his capital that he controlled. The OA is controlled through the contract's code. It's not just somebody sitting there clicking a button and hitting approve and all of that shit. So because he had that manual oversight, he could essentially rug any token at any time because he was the only liquidity provider. But man, at 10,000x, like that changed people's lives, you know, and you have people in here change their lives. We create our own systems and we do it ourselves, or it gets centrally managed by an exchange that ends up scamming everybody. So yeah, it might take a little bit more time, but at least it's being done the right way. I mean, as far as like price appreciation.
As far as that sacrifice goes too, you can think of it this way. Like you already have VCs and ICOs, and there's a lot of people around the world that cannot participate in them because of the restrictions that their governments put on them. So with the sacrifice, anybody can legally donate money to anybody they want with no expectations of any return. So the difference is I can sacrifice to something that I believe in, whether it be like breast cancer awareness, cancer society, blah, 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 some crypto movement or freedom of speech or whatever. I don't expect anything back for what I've given. If I don't get anything back, I understand that. I read the terms. So this is a legal way for us to be able to participate in something that we believe in. And what I believe in is no censorship and freedom of speech. And the biggest thing for Pulsechain that makes me bullish as fuck, and they're already doing it, is Ethereum proof of stake has already censored several people and projects. So that's just batshit crazy. It's going to destroy Ethereum. The people that are in this project believe in freedom of speech and the lack of censorship. So the people operating these nodes won't fuck around because their pulse coins are going to be taken away from them. And just because they have the principles to be in this project, it's not a bunch of globalists. So, and another thing about that globalist, we should really stop talking about the energy consumption of Bitcoin. That's a globalist propaganda. It's absolute fucking bullshit. In media consumption, television and radios and all the gadgets that we use in our daily life, that consumes far more than Bitcoin does. So they got to get off their high horses about the energy consumption of Bitcoin. It's bullshit.
You're right about that, because the real problem, the real lens should not be focused on the energy consumption. It's on the fact that miners have to dump Bitcoin, which is their reward for mining, in order to facilitate their operations. And sure, electricity is going to be some small component of that, but they have to hire people. They have to have a location. They have to pay rent. They have to upkeep the equipment. And that's all economic energy that has to get siphoned off in order to facilitate the network security. And so if you don't have to do that, your network retains more of that energy that people put into it.
Yeah, that added energy does add some security to it, but you're going to find, especially with like Bitcoin, all I see is it moving more centralized to the cheapest energy sources. So if people in Bitcoin really wanted to decentralize their nodes, they would be pushing for nuclear energy, which is dirt cheap and perpetually abundant. It's just unbelievable how much of that energy is around. So what they're doing is the opposite. There's, the Bitcoin people are agreeing that they're consuming too much energy. It's bullshit. It's the cost of energy. So what they're doing the wrong thing. They're pushing for renewables, and renewables aren't quite there yet. Hydro's pretty badass. Stored hydro's pretty badass. But wind energy isn't quite there yet. It's not very environmentally friendly from the shit they produce. And photovoltaics are absolute disasters when it comes time to process that, and they're not very viable in most of the countries.